Now, before you start pruning your tomatoes, it's important to learn the anatomy of a tomato. So let me just show you real quick. I have all my tomato plants pruned to about 2 to 3 main stems, depending on the plant. So this is going to be a main stem, and then this right here coming out the side, this is a side shoot. If you see right here in between the main stem and the side shoot is this thing right here. This is a sucker. They call this the armpit. It grows out of the armpit of the tomato. Now, this will produce, you know, a main stem. It will produce side stems. It will produce suckers of its own, and it will produce fruit. This is the flower. It comes off of the stem, and there's no leaves. It's just the flowers. Okay? A sucker will produce those as well. So if you want to save the suckers, yes, you will have more tomatoes. But your tomatoes will suffer because they will not get adequate airflow. As you can see, I have pruned the bottoms of my tomatoes. Now those behind there, those are green beans, so don't let that fool you. The tomatoes are pruned to about right here, so that's about 2 feet. It helps get these fruits on the bottom some sunlight, and it allows adequate airflow through this plant. I like to prune through the top too, just to make sure that, see, I mean, I can see through there. It's getting adequate airflow. There are a couple places that are a little denser, and I mean, you can see down here, I'm starting to have a little bit of problems, so I'm gonna prune that off as well. Anytime you see anything like this, just take it off as soon as possible, and that really does help extend the life of your plant. Okay, so right here, this is the main stem coming up. This is a side branch out here, and right here is the sucker. So you're just gonna pinch it off, just like that. Now these little suckers, there's not really a whole lot you can do with them. They're too small. But if you leave a tomato plant alone for a few weeks, this little bitty sucker right here will turn into a sucker that looks like this. You see how this is the main stem, this is the side shoot, and it is growing out the armpit. It's growing up, and it's doing its own thing. It's starting to create just a plant of its own. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take some trimmers, because you cannot break these off with your fingers. Oops. And so we've got the sucker that we forgot about for a few weeks, right? Now if you want to, you can take your scissors, your trimmers, and you can just trim this off like this and stick this down into a jar of water for a week or two until it starts getting roots, because tomatoes want to root so bad. So when this starts getting roots, you just take it out, put it in some dirt, kind of let it get used to the soil for a few days. After you get it in the soil, it might experience a small amount of transplant shock. It may look really bad, but just keep taking care of it, give it a couple days, and see if it pulls out. And you can have a whole nother batch of tomatoes later in the season when your tomatoes start producing, or if you just want to extend your growing season. A lot of times disease will get your tomato before it is ready to stop producing, so it's always good to have a backup crop, and it's free. As you guys know, I live in northern Washington, so I have about 30 days before our first frost. I have a lot of green tomatoes, but none of them are turning red, and this happens every year. I start freaking out. But I have found a way to kind of speed things along, and I want to show it with you. Now you see, this row of tomatoes are a bit bushier than the other row of tomatoes that I was at earlier. And the reason for this is, I mean, these mullein plants right here in this walkway have had a ton of bees on them. Still do. And so there are certain times of the day that you can come out here, and the rest of the time is, well, it's pretty dangerous. But as you can see, we've got lots of tomatoes on these plants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down here at the bottom, and I'm just going to start trimming some of these off. I won't do a lot at a time. You don't want to hurt the plant, but you do want to stimulate the energy to go towards the tomatoes instead of these side branches. I mean, they're good for energy and they're good for growth, but if you cut these off, the plant will be like, oh no. And so it will send all its energy into these tomatoes. I mean, look at them. I'm really excited about the tomatoes this year. There's a bunch over here. I don't want to get too close to this. Really active mullein. It's buzzing. There's a lot of big tomatoes and I'm super excited. I just need these bad boys to start turning red. This weekend sometime I'm going to come out here early when it's still cool, and I am going to trim some of this up. I'm going to try to focus these tomatoes' energy on the fruit, because I have a feeling that winter is coming, y'all. Our low in a couple days is 46. You cannot believe how much that freaks me out. Look at this beautiful garden, guys. Yeah, I can't help but show it to you because I love it. And these, oh, hey now. I mean, you don't have to be worried about it. Sunflowers are getting super tall. It's so lovely out here. Well, I hope you guys feel more confident about pruning your tomatoes. See you later.